Hello, Lorna. How are you doing?
Good, good. Good to see you,
Fantastic.
Jonathan.
Yeah, good to see you as always, too. Thanks so much for joining the podcast. It's a
No.
special Christmas edition, looking ahead to the
Yeah,
next year and a
and
review.
I have my Christmas jumper on.
Yeah, there you go. Mine's not quite as festive, but at least with the right color, maybe.
Yeah,
But yeah,
very
looking
good.
good. Wanted to talk. Thanks again for making time. Wanted to talk about. I mean, you're heavily involved in the faith movement for climate and faith movement for creation, and it seemed like at COP26 and throughout the year that this movement is really a burgeoning movement, right? It's getting stronger and stronger. And of course, you are in it, but what do you kind of see, and can you put on your kind of objective hat to say, this is happening? What have you seen? What stood out to you throughout 2021?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there is some shifts happening within different faith communities, which are really exciting, like in terms of climate action. If you think about it, people of faith, people who are believers in a religion, make up 80% of the world's population. That's a huge number of people. And they have access, they control a large amount of resources. They're one of the most organized groups in civil society that have a global reach. And one estimate says that faiths actually control 8% of the land surface of the earth. They're the largest value driven block of investors in the world. They control 60% of schools in southern Africa. And you can keep going on and on about the different things that the different assets that faith communities have. So I think there's a realization and amongst faith communities that as well as preaching to governments, carrying out advocacy, doing influencing work, which is obviously all necessary, faiths can actually have a tremendous power in and of themselves. I use the word stakeholders, that faiths are stakeholders in the future, faith communities, and that their own, if they go deep enough into their own beliefs and values, as has happened in the Catholic Church with Laudato Si, they start to see that there's a real potential to shift the dial on climate and on environmental issues just by mobilizing their own communities and starting to put environmental issues much higher on the agenda. And I think we've seen this in 2021. It got a big boost from the initiative the Pope took in bringing faith leaders together at the Vatican in October of this year, where faith leaders really they went on a journey. It started in January, meeting together from different faith communities and realizing that they could, yes, put out an appeal to COP for governments to change, but also that they could start to make plans themselves and take action to shift their own assets. So I mean, I see it as it's something I've never seen before on the same scale of faiths coming together, but it's definitely something that really excites me looking at 2022.
Without a doubt. Yeah, powerful meeting that was just before COP. And of course, it was a year round in the powerful text. We'll link to it in the show notes. But what do you think has changed? Like what I mean, the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis are getting worse, of course, but what do you think has really led to this kind of switch, in faith movements and the Catholic Church, of course, Pope Francis playing a huge role with Laudato Si, as we know, but what's kind of triggered that change throughout the world to see this coalesce at this time?
Yeah, I think there is. It's a good question. I mean, I think a combination of factors. I think the leadership of Pope Francis has been central to this. There's no question. I think everybody of all faiths would agree that Pope Francis in Laudato Si and in all the action that has come through Laudato Si has really set a high bar in terms of faith environmental action. And now we should say Catholics are quite late to the day when it comes to this. The World Council of Churches has been issuing, which is the main gathering of all the Protestant churches, has issued a writing and policy papers on environmental issues for almost 30 years. The Patriarch of Constantinople, Pope Patriarch Bartholomew, the Ecumenical Patriarch, has been, and he's quoted in Laudato Si, is really been working on this for 20 years at least. But I think Pope Francis, with his charisma, his charism, has really captivated the new audiences that now to take this seriously. And that has had a huge ripple effect with other faith leaders. And I think also the faith environment community is quite mature now. Maybe 10 years ago, it was a small number of little organizations which each were kind of working in their own space. But now I work with Faith Invest now, and we bring together different faith communities. So we have Green Faith, we have Faiths for Earth at the UNEP, we have the Interfaith Power and Light, we have the one that's gone completely out of my head now, but there are many different faith groups, multi-faith groups. There's EcoSeek, there's Boomi. These are all organizations that have sprung up in the last 10 years. And each of them brings something really distinctive. And I think what's really happened now is that people realize there's a greater potential to work together. And actually the internet and Zoom and the lockdown has actually made that happen. It would not have happened I don't think, if it wasn't for the fact we've been at home and we've had to rethink how we work. So with the Faith Invest work, we have issued an appeal for people to each religious group, each faith community to issue a plan on how it is going to tackle these issues and to publish that plan in 2022. And the response to that has been phenomenal. All the different groups agreeing, including Laudato Si Action Platform, agreeing to work together to come up to demonstrate to the world the full potential of faith groups and their role as stakeholders in the next year, in the next decade.
How else do you see that? Just to make this a bit more tangible, how else do you see the movement, the faith movement to care for creation growing? I mean, do you see more, obviously, director of movement building at Faith Invest? We should mention as well. How do you see more plans? Do you see, is it just more, how do you kind of measure that in your day to day?
So I see a number of things happening in the next year. I think one is very specific, and I think this has been catalytic as well, and that's the faith communities understanding how they can use their investments. So this has been really a catalyst in the past few years with faiths deciding to divest from fossil fuels. Now the question of, obviously divestment is very important, but the other side of the flip side of that is, where do we put our money? Is it enough to put our money in regular investment funds that are screened for fossil fuels? Or should we be focusing our investments on more tangible investments that have a really positive impact on tackling the climate crisis? So that's one area I think faiths are moving towards now, and collaborating towards looking at how do we put in place those kinds of investment funds that tackle the climate crisis. So whether that's impact investing in sustainable energy, in clean energy products, other impact-driven kind of funds that can have, and what we mean by impact funds is that these are funds that, yes, can give a return on investment, a fair return, but they also have a positive impact for the communities in which they are, in the businesses. So there's a triple bottom line. It's a bottom line for people, for planet, and also there's a profit. There's a return on investment. So I see that movement of positive investing for faith communities that have substantial assets invested. I see that continuing to grow in 2022 and beyond. The other things I see are, I think a lot of faith communities are looking at their land. Land is a huge asset for faith groups. Land and buildings. Many of the buildings are old and can benefit from retrofitting, can benefit from being upgraded. And that's one area that's going to really take off in the next year. But land is one where faith communities can have kind of a significant impact. So faith communities investing in regeneration of land, where land is not not being used in a sustainable way, regenerating it for nature, and also looking at biodiversity, like putting in place a plan for biodiversity, whether that's in temple grounds, church grounds, sacred forests, sacred mountains. Faiths have such a large diversity of land. Then supporting, let's say, biodynamic agriculture, agroecology on their land, looking at land use and how, without even going outside what the faith communities actually control, they can already start to shift their mindset and look at how we can use what we have to tackle climate change and the biodiversity crisis. And so, I mean, that's some of the things that I see. The other thing is faith, for example, faith universities, taking really much more seriously how they educate future generations for tackling the crisis that we face. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of faith-based universities across the world. Many of them are Catholic universities, and the Confederation of Catholic Universities has been looking at how these issues of Laudato Si can be incorporated into a core curriculum for students. And that's something really a long-term kind of project. So they're just some examples of how faith, and then of course I should say on the land side, tree planting, and making sure that tree planting is something that's done really well. And one of the roles that Faith Invest is playing through the Faith Plans programme is helping faith communities to get, let's say, the technical expertise that they need in order to do things well. So we're connected with the UNDP, with the UN Environment Programme, with other foundations like the EAT Foundation, different tree planting groups that can really help to ensure that projects that faith groups decide to put into practice as part of their faith plans, it can be done to the highest possible standard.
Yeah, it's almost like not a paradigm shift, but thinking, okay, let's advocate, but wait, let's look at ourselves as well, and let's get our own house more in order as well. So
It absolutely
fascinating.
is. I think it is a paradigm shift, or it's definitely a mindset shift. But I mean, it's like, how many religions say practice what you preach? It's almost,
Yeah.
certainly in the English language, it's a saying. Practice what you preach, and then preach what you practice. So I think that's the essence of the work that I can, or the shift that I can see happening. And I think some of it is really born from the deep sense of crisis that we're in. And let's not pretend that, in a sense, we have lots of time to do this. I think that there is a real awareness that we're in a deep crisis now. And I think Greta Thunberg, before COP, said something that really stuck with me, and that's that there's nobody coming on a white horse to save us. If we think that governments are going to just step up and change everything, that's not going to happen. The change that we need has to come. I mean, it has to come from everybody, but it has to, in my view, it has to come from those middle organizations in civil society and also amongst the business community. Those mid-level organizations that aren't government, they're not just individuals, but that can change the mindset of large groups of people. And I think that's where, what is faith at the end of the day? Faith is the deepest held values that people have, and people tell themselves to give meaning to their lives. So if someone's motivated by faith, generally it has a much greater pull on their ability to change their behaviour and their and for those behaviours to stick, because it's part of their kind of their deep sense of who they are. So what faith leaders say and how faith communities organise around environmental issues really matters. It really has a huge potential to shift things quickly. And I think that it's completely, what I think the new realization is that is completely in line with the deep theology of a large number of faiths. So it's a great point of unity amongst people of different faith.
And the middle organization you talked about, that middle kind of level. For the Catholic Church, that would be what, like a diocese, a parish, all both entities that, a regular person myself, other people can influence on a daily basis, really, right?
Yes, I mean, for in the Catholic world, I guess the kind of basic nucleus of society is always seen as the family, and that I love that, the fact that it's like the family's like whatever shape of family you have, it's like a little microcosm, and you can start with change there. And I know that the Laudato Si platform starts with the family as the basic level of engagement, and then you go all the way, like, so there's parishes, and then we have dioceses and bishops' conferences at a kind of national level, and all of those are ways in which to engage, to bring about change, and I think that is like, and all of those. I mean, I would really encourage people to go and enroll with the Laudato Si platform if people haven't already, because it's such a creative way to look at what you can do as opposed to all the things we feel we can't do. And you'll find that everybody can engage as a family. You can also engage as part of your parish. And I guess at the parish level, obviously, it's wonderful if the parish priest hopefully would be on board, but and other people in the parish, but if you have a parish council or whatever, but it doesn't need to start there. It can start from the grassroots. It can start from one person deciding, I'd like to get trained up on environmental issues and become a Laudato Si animator. And then finding other little groups of people who feel the same, and then bringing something to the parish priest, and then finding out, in a sense, what connects you with other people in your community. I know in my own parish here in Ireland, there's a lot of work goes on between the parish and the local, we call it the tidy towns, which is it's not only about being tidy, but it's about looking after your local area, and then other kind of groups who are around, like the sustainable energy communities, and looking at how you can start to work together with availing of what the resources are in the local area, and then coming up with little projects that can start to capture people's imaginations, such as we in our parish, we have a biodiversity garden, which is also a sensory garden for children who have sensory needs. So little projects like that, and then looking at what can be done to change the attitudes of simple things at parish functions, and then bringing it up to the parish level. Some of the harder things that need to be done may require engagement and finance at a diocesan level. For example, if a parish wants to change its heating system or to get renewable energy installed, that's usually something that's best decided at a diocesan level. But I think many dioceses now have environmental officers and people who are looking at these things, even if they're not completely kind of, there might not be everywhere yet, but I think that many are starting to look at where they can start to make kind of solid sustainability changes. And then another thing at a parish level that I find is really always works is to engage the local schools. So certainly in Ireland, all the parishes are connected to local primary schools, Catholic primary schools, and they're it's a real sense of you can get a lot of energy from engaging the local schools and helping to the children to get involved and families to get involved in environmental projects in the local parish.
Yeah, all great, fantastic tips. Um, Final question, because I know we have to get going, and I'll put you on the spot. 2022 will be a success if you can answer the question.
I think if this faith movement for climate action really comes together and demonstrates to the world that there is hope, that we can all really change our lifestyles, and we can make a huge impact on tackling this issue together.